Alright you guys, we're here at the local Harbor Freight and I just noticed that they came out with a new line of welders. It's this titanium series. I got the Vulcan Omnipro about a year ago. I've been really happy with it, but I'm kind of wondering why they would run two welders, two different brands kind of competing with each other. So we're going to take this one home here, put down some cash on it and try it out and run them and kind of compete with each other and see what we think about it. Just brought it home. We're going to take it out of the car, haul it in the shop and unbox it. Alright you guys. I'm not a big unboxing fan of videos, so we're just going to kind of cut through that. I'm going to show you the guys' contents, and I'm not going to painstakingly pull each piece out like a lot of people. So we're just going to get right to it. Alright you guys, so here's the contents that you get in the box. It's actually packaged pretty well. Got the welder, of course, and there's a few variations between this and the Vulcan already. The Vulcan came with two separate leads, and the leads unplugged off the back for 110 and 220. Anyways, it came with a little adapter. I don't think that's really a drawback or anything. Vulcan, however, never came with a Tig Torch. I think I had to spend 79 or 89 bucks for that, and I had to buy the pedal aftermarket from Vulcan. I don't know if this one is capable of running a pedal or not, so I'll have to look into that a little more. Cheap regulator. I mean, sure, it just works fine. Instructions, nothing too fancy here. I'm sure it's all fine. I'm sure it's all going to work, but even the Vulcan, all these little compact welders, they don't really come with the nicest components, of course. This doesn't scream out quality, but I'm sure it works fine. Just like same with the ground clamp. I think the ground clamp on the Vulcan looked a little nicer and probably worked a little better. These have these little round tabs on it. I'll show a close-up of that. This one runs a smaller DINS plugs on this one rather than the Vulcan. I don't think that's a problem either. The Vulcan also senses when you plug it into 110 or 220, it will automatically switch inside the unit. This one I see as a plug-in or a switch on the back next to the plug-in for 110 or 220. Now, I'm kind of curious, what if you go to plug it in and you had it on 110 and you plug it into 220? Will it fry the unit? So you may be wondering where the MIG lead is. They actually hid it inside here for shipping. So there it is. And we got this nice little sound effect here. Here's a little close-up of the front here. And I can guarantee you the Omnipro or the Vulcan guns won't fit on here because it's a total different plug-in, which is too bad they did that, but I'm sure this is coming from a whole different factory. But you know, it's got a nice little aluminum casted drive right here, which is a big step. I mean, I've had quite a few Lincolns and different welders in the past that were just plain plasticky, hokey stuff here. So the fact is, even those cheapo welders are actually putting nicer components than welders back, 10, 15 years ago. You got all your manual settings, which is just fine, but it's kind of nice to give a little kind of a cheat sheet up here. If you're welding a certain thickness of metal and what gas you're using and what wire you're using, you can just kind of go up here and reference this. And it did come with one spool of 030 solid and one spool of 030 flux. In case you don't have a tank to run with it right now, you can get welding right off the bat. So it's nice to include a little welding wire for anybody who wants to just get started. One thing to note is it didn't come with any tungsten electrodes, so you have to pick up some of that. It did come with a few different cups, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, here's both the MIG guns right here. They're both not the highest end out there, but I've had this for over a year and I've had no problem. I've dropped it on the floor, I've stepped on it, rolled stuff over it. It's still holding up. It's fine. Works for what I need. This one, it's on par with maybe 140 amp Lincoln at our shop. It's not as nice. Yeah, maybe you'll break it down the road or maybe it'll hold up fine. It's hard to say. A lot of this stuff I'm sure you could adapt another lead to it for any other variety, but I'm sure it'll get you welding. I don't think it's the worst out there. I've seen worse, but I've also seen better. Looked at the guns, and this is something worth noting, is it takes the same consumables as a Vulcan, so you can go in any Harbor Freight and get them. And keep in mind, in my other video I mentioned that if you go to Home Depot, I'm sure Lowe's probably has stuff too, but Home Depot sells kind of entry-level consumer Lincoln products there, and their consumables fit both these welders. So that's something worth noting. It's not a problem to get these. Because this is 49 pounds, they're claiming like 22 or 24 pounds on this thing, which is pretty light. That's tempting for me for doing projects outdoors. Multi-voltage, which is super nice, having an inverter welder. Alright, so we'll talk Tig Torches. This one came with the titanium welder. Looks to me like the exact same torch. You can find these consumables all day long on Amazon and places like that, so that's not a problem. They don't scream out quality either, but hey man, this one always worked for me. I mean, I don't really do a ton of TIG welding. I'm kind of learning it still, but they look like they'll do fine for just the dude that's using them on occasion. If you're doing professional welding with it, you might want to upgrade, but again, I think you can put almost any TIG torch you really want on these things. They just got the DIN standard plug, and this is the larger size. This runs the smaller size. The titanium does come with this nice line wrap on it. The Vulcan, which keep in mind, I had to pay I think another $79 for the torch to include it with the Vulcan. So that was something I had to pay extra for. This one comes with it, but it does come with this nice line wrap. Now the gauges, here's the gauge that came with the Vulcan, here's the gauge that came with the titanium. They both have different configurations. This one threads in on the back like this one goes on the side of the bottle. The one that came with the Vulcan's a little heavier, a little bit nicer gauges I feel. I haven't turned this one on yet, but a little more meat to this one. I'm sure they both will work fine though. It's like all included with it, which is fine. I mean, might be guys that really want nice gauges. Probably not buying a welder from Harbor Freight anyways. So if you're a dude that just wants to do some hobby work at home and do occasional welding jobs and are happy just to have a multi-purpose welder, I think both of these will do fine. So one thing else I wanted to include in here was the Tig Torch that came with the unit here. The titanium is actually a 10-foot torch, and the one you have to pay for the Omnipro is actually a 14-foot torch. So you get a few more feet on that, but you got to pay for it. The power cords on the back, like I mentioned, this one does not come off of here. It's connected to the machine constantly, which is probably just fine. This one on the Vulcan does, however, come off, and they give you two 10-foot cords, one for 110, one for 220. And it's a standard plug, and if you ever screwed it up, you could probably go to one of like Home Depot or something and get a different plug for it. So the 10-foot cord came with the Vulcan. This guy's, however, is a little different. This one came with a 9-foot 220 cord and a 2-foot extension to go to 110. So it's actually on 110 you get 11 feet, 220 you get 9 feet. Now I did see a few YouTube videos, some comments people made, and somebody claimed that these had both the same duty cycle, which isn't definitely not true. That's another reason to kind of make this video, kind of point out some of the differences on these things. It's helpful for me, so I was wondering, like, if I went in there today, didn't own this, which one would I picked up? You know, there's a lot of price difference on them. 220 volts on this guy at 200 amps, 24 volts for the MIG gun. It is 25% duty cycle. And on the titanium, at 200 amps, 24 volts for MIG, it is 15% duty cycle. So we've got 25 and 15. So there's some differences there. And across the whole board, the duty cycle is just better on the Vulcan. And it's 220 rather than 200. But I mean, both of them, as long as this one welds good and holds up like the Vulcan, probably a good welder, but we're gonna make some sparks soon. So stick around and watch that. Again, I think both these welders are great for a dude that has a welder, you know, want to do some stuff around his shop and things. If it's a professional guy and they're bitching about this video and this and that, which I've had people bitch about the other Vulcan video, if you're a professional welder, you probably don't want to run this stuff, you know? I don't know, maybe it'll hold up fine professionally, but for a guy like me, it opened the possibility to weld aluminum with the spool gun. It opened up possibility to TIG weld, which I've never had a welder do that. You can stick. I've learned on stick. I'm not a big fan of stick welding. I know a lot of people like it. I like MIG for what I do, thinner metals and things like that. But occasionally I'll get out the stick welder. It's got its advantages. It's just different uses, you know. But I think both of these welders, if this one welds good and holds up, I'm sure they're both great for guys that want a welder. I think if you're going like welding boats professionally, like welding, I know a friend that welds aluminum boats, he's not going to run this stuff. Maybe it'll hold up, maybe it won't, I don't know. But I have a feeling that's where you get the bigger duty cycles on more expensive machines if you're doing it as a business. But I've welded a lot of stuff together with this thing, and I've never overheated it yet or stuck on the duty cycle. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're welding professionally and you need to run a high duty cycle because you're constantly putting down heavy amps on it, you probably want a better machine. But for most dudes, it's pretty rare. I hit duty cycles numerous times on a 140 Lincoln at work the other day. We're welding some thicker steel on it and fixing up this rack, and I had to put a lot of beads down, and it just kept hitting a duty cycle. So it can be frustrating if you're doing a big job. But again, this machine has way more amps, and I probably would never hit the duty cycle on this machine doing what I did with that Lincoln. The Lincoln just couldn't keep up. And yeah, you gotta let it sit for 4 or 5 minutes, let it rest, and then go back to welding. It was kind of an inconvenience, but it's not that common, even on really low duty cycles, for me to hit that. Depends on how I work on the projects, you know. So I wanted to make sure to do a little welding in this video before I wrap it up here. And I don't have a big welding project to do tonight, but my buddy Dave just gave me a new wood stove for my shop. The little one I have is just not really keeping this place warm enough. The wood stove he gave me has a fan in it, so it blows air around. It should be pretty nice. but it needs legs, so I'm going to weld some 1/8 inch tubing up and make a little stand for it. So we'll fire this thing up and do a little welding next. So after looking this thing over a little closer, of course, you know, there's a spool gun and MIG flux control switch right in here, but this is kind of neat. This has a quick disconnect here, which is kind of cool. Must be for maybe if you're using the spool gun, I'm not sure. I thought that was kind of an interesting little feature. All right, I'm gonna give it a shot and turn it on here. So let me show you guys something. I think my buddy's Miller Matic 200, when we tested it about a year ago alongside the Omnipro, had this feature in it. The Omnipro has a spool button in here if you want to actually spool some wire through the whole MIG gun. This one senses it automatically. Watch, I'll pull on the trigger here. It'll go slow for a moment, and then it senses there's no arc, and then it'll speed up the spool. See that? That's kind of a nice little feature. So we're running C25 gas here, and we're running 30 wire, and we're running about 14 gauge metal. So it looks like a wire speed of 165, 17 for voltage, and inductance is 5 to 10. One thing I'd like to note is, as you guys know, I got the Vulcan. I bought that with my cash about a year ago. I went and bought this today, and no way am I sponsored by Harbor Freight. I just was curious about seeing these two welders, and going in there today, if I didn't have a welder, which one would I decide to buy? I don't know. That's why I want to run this test on it. So here's the receipt. I had a $50 coupon, and I got it. It was $6.99. I got 50 bucks off, so $6.49 plus $99 for a 2-year extended warranty, and after tax came to $8.15. Now I don't know if you guys can hear this on the microphone, but it actually has pre-flow on the gas. So when you pull on the trigger, the wire doesn't come out instantly, in maybe a half a second or a little less, but you start flowing gas to get some shielding gas. So check this out. Pretty neat. All right, you guys, this is the first arc I'm gonna weld with this thing. As you see, the tip's clean. You're gonna see how it goes. This is box stock settings, and see what we get out of it. Sound a little weird, a little fluttery, but it actually laid on a pretty good weld. See if we can get you guys zoomed in here. All right, one thing I did was I just increased the wire speed a little bit from 165 to 175. It's just a little bit of playing around with it, and it had a little less chattery kind of a sound, but both welds turned out really nice. No splatter, they look really well. So I'll point out one feature this thing has the Vulcan doesn't, and I don't know if it's a make or break on either machine. I've just never had this on a welder. Maybe higher end welders have this, I'm not sure, but it's got T2, or 2T I should say, and 4T. And 2T is a common. You pull the trigger on, it starts welding, you release it, and it stops. When you click on the 4T, you pull the trigger on, once it starts to arc, you let go, and it welds for as long as you leave your finger off the trigger, and when you want to stop welding again, you just tap it again and it stops welding. Kind of an interesting feature. It's not like my finger gets that fatigued, but maybe it's got its place. So I'm really kind of liking this welder here. It seems to work really well so far. Like I said, with all these, and same with the Omni a year ago, time will tell. But you know, I mentioned earlier it had pre-flow. I've also realized the solenoid you hear click off about 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds after you're done welding. So it's got post-flow as well, which is a nice feature. Alright you guys, sorry it wasn't a cooler project, just a wood stove stand, wasn't that spectacular, but I really didn't want to be one of those guys that talk about it and never actually weld with it. I wanted to show this thing working on the first project. Keep an eye out for the weeks to come, because what I really want to do is run these two welders side by side in MIG comparison, stick weld comparison, and TIG welding comparison videos. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to go over the pros and cons of each welder. And all inverter welders, I think the time will tell on them. I don't care what name, what brand. I think they're all computer-based welders, and they're not going to last like an old welder. You know, that's just the way it is. But anyways, beyond the point of that, this thing worked great tonight. I was really happy with it. It welded really, really nice. Time will tell on it, but we'll do these videos in comparison, because the reason I'm doing these videos, say if I didn't have a welder, or I was looking to upgrade welders, say I had, like a long time ago, I had a little Lincoln, and it didn't work very good, and I upgraded to the Omnipro. But say I went in there looking to upgrade welders, looking at the Titanium 200 or the Omnipro 220, which would I pick? I'm not sure. So, you know, this is one of those things where, like, if I walked into the store wanting to upgrade welders that has multi-capability, you know, stick, TIG, and MIG, and spool gun, I'd be questioning this. Price-wise, there's not too much difference between them. Accessory-wise, there is a little more price change. But there are some variations in duty cycles and stuff like that. So we're going to go over these things on the next up and coming videos. If you guys want to stick around and check out the rest of the video series, hit like and subscribe, and you'll get notifications when those new videos come out. Alright, you guys, thanks for checking it out. Take care. Bye.